Hello there and welcome. I'm Rev Nhien, founder of Evolving Enneagram. If you've been seeking a compassion-based, contemplative approach to Enneagram-informed transformation, you are most certainly in the right place. This is where contemplation meets the Enneagram. So, we are now in week 6 of a 12-week Sunday talk series based on the theme, The Care of the Soul. And throughout these weeks, I am drawing insights and inspiration from my new book, The Enneagram of the Soul, a 40-day spiritual companion for the 9 types. This week's talk is titled Awakening from Relationship Trances by Enneagram Type, and I'll take today's talk in 3 parts. In part 1, I'd like to share about practice 7 in this book, which is called Namasté, Beholding the Divinity in All. In part 2, I want to move into how we are barred from seeing the divinity in ourselves or others through our relationship trances, the trance of our Enneagram type. And this, in part 2, I'll give just like an example of what that might look like for you to consider for this week. And then in part 3, I'd love to close with some personal sharing as well as a poem I wrote this week inspired by a soul to soul connection with a friend of mine. So let's begin. If you are following along with your book, I'd love for you to open it to page 65 of the Enneagram of the Soul. And I'll share almost verbatim some of the teaching that I offer here today with a little bit of added commentary. Namaste. Beholding the divinity in all is the practice. I'd like to open with words by a Kripalu yoga teacher, Rivka Grace Savitri, who wrote, "The way you alchemize a soulless world into a sacred world is by treating everyone as if they are sacred until the sacred in them remembers." So in the United States, yoga classes have helped to popularize the Anjali Mudra, a sacred hand position originating in India. This contemplative posture involves placing our palms together in front of our hearts, as I just demonstrated, to signify beholding the divine in ourselves and the person before us. This a deportment that physically mirrors what Christians might call prayer hands, right? And that countless wisdom traditions around the world view as an act of reverence. There's a lot of commonality across the world's religious traditions in this gesture, in this movement. So I first learned the mudra in my Unity community. At the same time, I learned Unity's truth principle that basically says this, that God is immanent as well as transcendent. I mean, that God is within as well as without. If God is everywhere present, if the divine is everywhere present, then it is in you and in me, in everyone, right? And I know there's some of us who are like, well, harder to see in certain people and certain politicians. And yes, this is a practice. But if you believe this notion that like divine love or divine mind, divine wisdom, divine light, whatever you call God or the sacred, is everywhere present, then it's not for lack of presence in another being, but lack of my ability to see, right? To behold, to literally behold that in another. And so this is a practice designed to support us in beholding that. And I have noticed that within myself, uh, parallel to that teaching that is like, oh, we need to love ourselves in order to love others, there is this kind of parallel around, oh, when I am not holding my own divinity, it's harder to hold the divinity of another. That perhaps that they are linked, that there's a filter that blocks me from from holding the fullness and holiness of my own being if, say, I'm feeling like a failure, or, like there's certain things where I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, right? So then if I have that lens, if I'm honest with myself, I might be, doing the posture of that toward you, but not necessarily really knowing that. But then somehow, as I have come into a deeper knowing of my own wholeness and holiness, then the authenticity of my capacity to hold that truth for you is just like right there and open. And when it's not, it becomes more obvious to me the more that I'm open to that in my lived experience. So I took this off the wall here, not needing you to actually see it, but oh, you can see the the selfie light in there, the reflection. So these words I'm going to read to you. It's in my book, and since 2005, I have kept these words posted by the front door in every place that I have lived. And these are the words from A Course in Miracles. Remember, A Course in Miracles comes from the perspective they used the pronoun he, so but I've converted it to they and them. When you meet anyone, remember it is a holy encounter. As you see them, you will see yourself. As you treat them, you will treat yourself. As you think of them, you will think of yourself. Never forget this, for in them you will find yourself or lose yourself. Beholding the holiness of all life is a purifying, grounding, and generative practice that helps us see beyond our apparent flaws and grounds us in the fundamental truth of our divine wholeness and holiness. The Anjali mudra is generally accompanied by the salutation, Namaste. Namaste is a Sanskrit word often translated as I bow to the divinity within you from the divinity within me. This salutation is a practice of seeing the divine within all of creation. It can be offered equally to all of existence, not just to people, but in homage to the sacred in every creature and every mountain, ocean, or tree. We practice this at every evolving Enneagram gathering and after each person shares in our contemplative Enneagram groups. And while we can certainly hold the sacred prayer intention without employing the Anjali mudra, this yogic posture can help us to seal and embody the intention. In fact, the term Anjali means offering, and the term mudra means seal. Think about that. Offering, to seal our offering. There's something about embodying our prayers with a physical gesture that helps bring our spiritual intention into the material or like the manifest world. So I'm going to invite you to practice this prayer posture. You can see me getting adjusted here. To practice this, lengthen your spine out of your pelvis and extend the back of your neck by dropping your chin slightly, just slightly. In here, down like that. Then with open palms, slowly draw your hands together at the center of your chest as if to gather all of your resources into your heart, right? So think of that. When done properly, Sri Tirumalai Krishnamacharya, often considered to be the father of modern yoga, and sorry if I totally butchered that name, teaches, the palms are not flat against each other. The knuckles at the bases of the fingers are bent a little, creating space between the palms and fingers of the two hands, resembling a flower yet to open. symbolizing the opening of our hearts. We can repeat this movement as a practice several times. This might be your practice this week. Contemplating the integration of wholeness through the bringing together of opposites, the right and the left side of yourself, the masculine and the feminine, the sky and the earth, logic and intuition, strength and tenderness, and so forth, into wholeness. As yoga teacher Shiva Ray describes it, as you bring your hands together at your center, you are literally connecting the right and left hemispheres of your brain. This is the yogic process of unification, the yoking of our active and receptive natures. In the yogic view of the body, the energetic or spiritual heart is visualized as a lotus at the center of the chest. Anjali Mudra nourishes this lotus heart with awareness, gently encouraging it to open as water and light to a flower. For a deepened experience, you can sense how potent the placement of your hands at your heart can be by experimenting with shifting your hands to one side or the other and pausing there for a moment. Do you feel an imbalance? Now shift your palms back to center and notice how you feel. Only if your flexibility will allow it, by the way. Gently touch your thumbs into your sternum as if you were ringing the bell to open the door of your heart. You can see that there. Pull back your shoulders to spread your chest open. It's like opening your heart. Feel the space under your armpits as you align your elbows with your wrists. Again, only if your body can do this without intense strain. Take a moment to check in. What initial shifts do you experience in consciousness or in mood? What changes within you as you receive life from this open posture? So, I hope you have a little bit of fun with this practice. And don't beat yourself up at all if you have some physical strain around it. Just do your best to put your heart's intention into it, even if your body doesn't quite, match all of that yet. You can start by engaging this practice. This is all in my book. Start by engaging this practice by beholding the holiness within yourself and others in those circumstances where it feels easiest. Start there. For instance, if it's easy for you to perceive the divine in nature, practice offering Namasté to the natural world, and it will help you to feel held by the world in the same sacred light. Then direct it toward environments or people where it feels more difficult. Maybe you're watching the news. Just give it a practice. Rather than being so embittered, let's see what happens when we bring an awareness of the sacred and the holiness, rather than lamenting who's not doing that, right? Rather than judging others for their lack of doing that, and then returning that with a lack, right? Bringing forth the willingness even to behold all others as holy. So, as I mentioned in my book, you might practice this toward people with Enneagram types that trigger you the most. And you'll find that the prayer helps to cultivate an awareness of divinity in both directions, meaning your own as well as the others. And so this leads us to part 2. So for part 2, I invite you to turn to page 159 of your book if you are following along. Again, you don't need to. But this is in the section on activations, and this is day 27, and the activation is called relationship trances. So on this theme of beholding, seeing, being awake to the divine within you, within others, within life, I want to focus in specifically on like human relationships right now and consider how each of us by Enneagram type have a propensity to have a filter over our capacity to meet soul to soul. And of course, this, as we explore the Enneagram of the soul and the theme of these weeks, which is the care of the soul, the nurturing of the soul, I want to invite you to consider relationship from the perspective of how soul connections are not limited to these special people in our lives we might call like our soulmates or people who are naturally our soul friends, but everyone to open up to a soul connection with those with whom we struggle, right? And I have to say, even if you do are very focused on the idea of soulmates, then you do know that having a quote soulmate definitely does not mean that it's an easy path, right? In fact, it could be one of the most primary paths to awakening, to have someone whom you're really, really drawn to, who then triggers a lot of your wounds, right? Again, with this idea that the trigger, the challenge between you and them, between us, is the way, the path of awakening. It's not in the way, right? But there's information there, there's wisdom there to move toward. And so with that, I want to open with a quote from John Wellwood. A soul connection is a resonance between two people who respond to the essential beauty of each other's individual natures behind their facades, and who connect on this deeper level. This kind of mutual recognition provides the catalyst for a potent alchemy. It is a sacred alliance whose purpose is to help both partners discover and realize their deepest potentials. A soul connection not only inspires us to expand, but also forces us to confront whatever stands in the way of that expansion. So, huge gratitude and thanks for those who trigger us and inspire us to expand, right? So, learning the Enneagram helps us to live into our fullness and magnificence, in part by describing the ways we get trapped in the trance of type. Recognizing that we're in a trance is a starting point for waking up. We begin to see how our type structure might be sabotaging true intimacy and soulful connection. Again, I'm not talking about soulmates, which might just be like the people who catalyze our awakening the most, but I'm talking about everyone. So consider engaging this Namasté practice I just offered in tandem with your type's activation this week. Here are the 9 activations. For type 1, when in the trance of type, you tend to think criticizing your loved ones is the best way to improve your relationships. However, doing so typically creates a fiercely unaccepting and thus unsafe relational space that is toxic to genuine intimacy. Do your best to welcome intimacy and trust by affirming with sincerity what's good in your loved ones instead. Practice this in your unspoken thoughts as well as by voicing your appreciation directly. Type 2. When in the trance of type, you tend to cultivate dependency in others as protection against rejection. After all, if they need you, how could they leave you? This often leaves you resentful, exhausted, and unavailable for the closeness and reciprocity that you desire. Be willing to risk rejection to experience authentic relationships of mutual respect generosity, and care. Type 3. When in the trance of type, you tend to get lost in the role you play, whether as a partner, parent, or friend. Even if others love and admire your role, you don't end up really feeling loved for who you are. The only way to know your true belovedness is to mindfully catch yourself in the act as often as you can and willingly stop performing. Type 4. When in the trance of type, you tend to become confused about what is real. Too often, your romanticized ideals feels more intense and deeper and thus more real than the actual people and events happening right in front of you. True authenticity invites you to wake up from your reverie. Only then will you find the magic you've been missing in what at first feels mundane. Type 5. When in the trance of type, you habitually disconnect from your feelings in real time, which can come across as cold or uncaring to those you love. People can't always tell how sensitive you are. Sometimes beneath that cold exterior, you are feeling rejected or hurt. Connect more deeply with others by checking in with yourself to identify what you are truly feeling. Step out of your comfort zone by opening up to your loved ones about feelings you've compartmentalized and stuffed deep down inside. Experiment with trust as a gateway to truly satisfying interactions. Type 6. When in the trance of type, you can sometimes poke and test others too often, even unconsciously. Constantly testing others' loyalty or affection can wear them down. You end up eroding the very solidity you are trying to obtain. While you're never going to stop asking for confirmation or testing through trials, see if you can simply do this less often and assume others' good intentions and steadiness of heart more often. Type 7. When in the trance of type, you tend to be highly distractible, which can feel dismissive and disrespectful to others. With those who matter, practice giving them your undivided attention. Listen not just with your head, but also with your heart, so you can actually feel what might be going on for them. Ultimately, you'll find that being more present with both mind and heart isn't just a gift to the other person. It makes the interaction much more amazing for you as well. Type 8. When in the trance of type, you tend to be highly individualistic, making and changing plans on the fly, unthinkingly leaving those you care about out of the loop. Strategically withholding information for fear of being controlled is a way you try to maintain power and autonomy over your situation. While it might feel threatening at first, choosing to let loved ones in on your activities and being receptive to feedback can help you to co-create a life much bigger and better than any you had dreamt of on your own. Type 9. When in the trance of type, you tend to merge with others or do your best to blend in to belong, letting your individual identity fade into the background of the life you share with others, whether at home or work. However, self-abandonment takes its toll, and over time you completely check out of the relationship. Be willing to check in with yourself on a routine basis by patiently yet persistently asking yourself, what are my true wants, feelings, and opinions? Doreen Virtue, an American author, wrote, every relationship has a spiritual purpose that helps us grow and become stronger. Sometimes our most challenging relationships bring the greatest personal blessings. From them, we learn about forgiveness, patience, and other virtues. So I will close now with just some personal reflections and then a poem. You know, this idea that our relationships are a path to spirit. When I first realized this, that that they are for my awakening rather than, oh, this person is here to give me something, like give me a sense of worth or feed my ego in some way or feed my need for security in some way, whatever it is. That's different for each of us. Feed my need for pleasure could be one way of looking at other people in a way that is more functional or about our egoic connection rather than about opening to the spaciousness of our shared divinity, if you will, our shared holiness. And I know that in the past, the things that I've been willing, I feel like the things that have opened me up the most, maybe to my own authenticity and to like a greater love, have had to do with the things that were most challenging in my relationships. And for many years, that had to do with romantic relationships. And I'm kind of baffled and amazed now that that's not like the primary field, and that there's some steadiness and like just like a lot of spaciousness and freedom for us both in my romantic partnership to be ourselves in a way that the needy Nhien couldn't allow. And so I've experienced that now. Friendship is sort of like that next field for me, the field of like, oh, so okay, I probably overvalued romantic relationships, and given that I was a super lonely kid who had books for friends, like this making of friends in my adult life has been really kind of a vulnerable and tender thing. And I know that because I am confident in my work and I have a degree of like groundedness in who I am today, that some of the shyness and tenderness of me as just like a girl, like, oh, wanting to make a friend or like deepen friendship, like it's not obvious to people, right? Because the persona that I carry is very like, I've got it together. So clearly, like I have no insecurities, but that's not the case at all. And this week, I felt like I did something brave by approaching a longtime friend with whom I had started to feel or experience some distance. And the approach, I realized if I was going to do this in a way that wasn't guarded, that wasn't like in my role, even my role as a friend, or because this person's a core part of the evolving Enneagram community, in my role as a facilitator or a teacher, and to understand that like, oh, if I could drop those things, then I didn't have to be so wise, I didn't have to know everything. And that kind of opened up for me this capacity for curiosity. We talked about this a lot at Evolving Enneagram, which is like compassionate curiosity. And so I approached her first with that of like, oh, I don't even know who you are, where you are right now, and I've been making these assumptions, and I want to check my assumptions, and I want to check to see what's really going on for you and what matters to you, what's happening for you. And so that's kind of how we started the conversation. And I have to say that like I was so grateful for the capacity and even I'll say the bravery to do this, because I mean it wasn't like it went so well and so beautifully, but it didn't have to. I mean, it could have gone, I could have been really hurt approaching this person and then realizing that, oh, maybe she's not as interested and I am at like knowing me and knowing what was truly in my heart. But it was the opposite was true, and we were able to open it and deepen. And and so the next morning, so there's so much I could say about it, but the next morning I woke up and I was reflecting on it, and maybe what I have to say about it is all kind of like in this poem. And it's funny because I've had romantic partners be my muse for poetry, but maybe never a friend before. This is in honor of my friendship with Christina Frank, who is in our one of our facilitators and adjunct faculty at Evolving Enneagram, but she's also a friend, like a real friend. And so this is for her, but maybe it's for you too. Maybe there's something here for you. So I call this poem The Womb of Friendship. And part of it was we were talking about motherhood and last week's topic, self-mothering and mothering in community, and also how our society, maybe historically, at least in recent decades, hasn't really valued that role in our society, this way of being, and that we explored the gifts of motherhood for the potential of a better world. So now the poem. We can do brave things. We can take risks to speak for true friendship and come out the other side of lonely tunnel vision, wider in perspective, deeper in care. I live in ever widening circles of love, but for this inner circle, too close to my heart to bear a Cupid's miss, it is only this. The sort of souls who meet without limit to time or grace, the sort of minds who open with brilliance like starlit galaxies of space. Together, we become sunlight in this field of unknowing, in this womb of birthing place. We craft our own rite of passage between Mother Earth and Auntie Sky, where a hawk flies by. This is our journey home, no longer in a mirror darkly, but in each other's hallowed eyes. We see each other face to face. We cry, and the world is no longer cold and hollow and hard and dry. Namaste.